When we start this case, we want to just give you a little bit of a warning. This content is intended for adult audiences and it's created for educational and informational purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Discussions may include references to real criminal cases, violence, and other sensitive and potentially distressing topics. If at any time you feel distressed or upset by the content, please step away and come back when you want to. We'll always be here waiting. Welcome to Case by Case. Today we're going to dive in to the Jamison family disappearance. The Jamison family is a very unusual case. So this is not like some of the other cases that we've looked at. There is no longer a missing person. This is a situation where a family disappeared and several years later their remains were found, but there was no way to tell what happened to them. So we're going to dive in to what they were doing before they left and try to see if we come to some thoughts about what actually happened. So let's talk about who they were. The Jamison family was Bobby, who was 44, Cheryl Lynn, his wife, who was 40, and Madison, who was 6. They were known to be quiet and spiritual in nature. They sort of lived off on their own in Eufaula, Oklahoma, and they really wanted to move out even further so that they could get away from society, um, problems, rumors, gossip. I tried to dig in a little bit to find out what it was that they felt people were gossiping about them. Because as an average person, what is drawing attention to yourself? And I'm not putting the blame on her. I'm saying what circumstances were taking place that led people to need to gossip about them. So I did look into that a little bit. But first, let's talk about Madison also had a puppy, and Madison's puppy's name was Maisie. So what happened is they wanted to move out to a 40-acre plot away from everything. They wanted self sufficiency, and what they were looking for is they wanted to have two great big storage areas on their property, and that's why they needed a large part of property. They wanted to farm and they wanted something for storing all of their essentials. And this is in addition to the home that they wanted. So they began looking for 40 acres of undeveloped land in the Red Oak area in the Sandboy Mountains. I don't know if I pronounce the S on that or not, so I'm going to say Sandboy Mountains. Okay, and you guys can let me know if I'm wrong. All right, so a couple of things about the family before we get into this. Bobby had an accident in 2003, and he had his own business. It was a gas station. He had always managed that and run that, and things were going pretty well. But in 2003, he had some sort of accident, and he was put on disability and did not receive a lot of money. Now, I tried to dig into whether or not there were um, a good amount of whether there were lawsuits and there was money from lawsuit. It appears he did have something, but I don't know the amount. And the accident definitely left him depressed, in pain, and both he and Sherilyn were on antidepressants. Family said that the stress and the isolation had really taken a toll. And the Oklahoma State Bureau noted that there were depressive statements from both of them in the months prior to all this happening. In addition to Bobby's injuries, Sherilyn only received a small settlement after her sister's death. So her sister died at a young age, and this really affected Sherilyn as well. So I'm bringing all this out because I want you to understand that they had a lot of emotional things going on, and this was affecting their finances as well. Because when you are on disability, you're on a limited income, it's very hard to make your bills. So, and I don't know if they just didn't reach out to people for help or what was going on, but they definitely felt moving to that other area would help them. Couple of other things. Before they left, they experienced growing paranoia and unease. And in fact, the paranoia was so great that Bobby sued his own father, Bob, for allegedly making threats, or excuse me, Bob sued Bobby. I'm sorry. The father sued the son. And the father sued the son because he said they were making threats to him. And supposedly it was related to family property disputes. But there was definitely something going on because Sherilyn was writing. She wrote a great deal, and she wrote in journals. And her journals said that witches and demons hide in plain sight. She also talked about a spiritual war. Now, I want to make a comment about this spiritual war. Well, first of all, before I do that, I want to say she kept a 22 caliber pistol under her pillow and painted messages on their storage containers such as "Get out, Satan." Bobby confided to his pastor that his father had connections to white supremacy groups and feared those men might harm his family. The pastor later told reporters he could not confirm whether this threat was real, but he did know that Bobby believed in it. And the Jamisons also suspected they were being followed when driving to view land parcels. The real estate agent said that Sherilyn really was paranoid and that on one trip she was obviously scanning the tree line looking for people while they were out looking at property. Now, the locals speculated about cult activity in the mountains after the disappearance because Sherilyn's references to witches and demons and the discovery of religious writings that are later found. But the OSBI did check into this, and they stated there was no evidence of cult involvement, but the rumor continued online, and it not only continued online, it continued in the communities. But the pastor said there was no cult, no witchcraft, nothing like that. But Sherilyn really believed there was. And when someone believes they're being hunted, it changes how they see the world. That's partially a quote from Pastor Gary Brunson, and he was the pastor at their church. Now, I want to talk for just a moment about this spiritual warfare comment. A lot of people who have religious beliefs, Christianity and non-Christianity, who believe in a higher power, believe that there's a struggle between good and evil. So this comment about spiritual warfare doesn't really alarm me that much until you couple it with the paranoia. Someone's watching me from the tree line. Someone's coming out here. Someone's getting me. There's witches and demons. But the comment itself of there being a war between good and evil and spiritual warfare, that doesn't really alarm me because that's a really common thing that people have said. Now, the family believes there were some things going on, but when we get to their disappearance, I'll talk more about the family. I kind of got to go back and forth a little bit on this. Okay, let's talk about the day they vanished. On October 8th, 2009, they packed their truck up and they left for a planned trip. They made a final phone call to a friend and said they were on their way to the mountains. Cell tower pings placed them on Route 270 that afternoon. Their destination was a parcel they'd recently found with a GPS mark that was saved as final site. And I think that GPS mark is not from them. I think it was from the OSBI. So the timeline is they pack up, they leave their Eufaula home in their white pickup truck, and reportedly to view property near Red Oak, Oklahoma. Surveillance footage from their home, which is timestamped that morning, shows Bobby and Sherilyn making roughly 20 silent trips. They're not speaking to one another or anything. They're just going back and forth. People that watch this have said this looks like they're in a trance. I don't see that from the video myself. It looks like just bad video, but you guys can weigh in when I play it. They loaded their belongings without speaking or acknowledging each other. And around midday, phone records show both of their cell phones traveling northwest towards Samboy Mountains. And the GPS coordinates later confirmed they reached the logging road that leads towards the parcel they had been visiting with their realtor. Now, I don't know if they'd already bought it or if they were going out there to meet to buy it. I don't know. But the last person to see them alive was a local landowner who passed them on the road and recalled Bobby appearing calm, maybe tired. I'm not quite sure how you would see that if you're in a vehicle going past another vehicle, probably at 40 to 70 miles an hour, depending on the speed. I mean, unless you know him really well and you're like, oh, that's not what he usually looks like. But anyway, cell data shows their phone stopped transmitting around 3 p.m. near that marked area. Weather that day was clear but cool, with temperatures dropping rapidly at onset. That's taken from the National Weather Service. The items in their truck included camping gear, food, personal documents, a GPS unit, and $32,000 in cash stored under the seat. Now, they believe this to be proceeds from a recent property sale or lawsuit payment. And that may be what they were taking to buy the land. I don't know. We just really don't know. They did bring the family dog, Maisie. Maisie really belonged to Madison, the little girl. But Maisie was brought along with them. And the sheriff said it looked like they packed for a day trip, maybe two. Nothing suggested they were running away. So now we're going to talk about this surveillance footage. The footage captures the family's behavior prior to their disappearance. And I'm going to try to play it on here. But if I can't play it, you can find it on Parkman Magazine YouTube, or you can Google Jamison Family surveillance video and you can find it. Let's see if it'll play. It is not going to play. So you'll have to find it that way. I apologize. But at any rate, this video shows them walking back and forth. Now, I want to point out something about this video. I did a deep dive into what people thought about this video, and there were people that really believe that in the video they see this truck in the back with the doors open. They see the door light up, and they see another person in that truck. So there are people that believe there's a man with a brown shirt where Bobby is wearing a white shirt and Sherilyn's got on a yellow shirt. There are people that believe there's a third party that's in that truck, and that is why they are not saying anything to each other. They're not acknowledging one another. They're just walking back and forth to get items. I don't know. I can't see what they see. I don't know where they get that information, but watch it on your own and write comments in the discussion group if you want, or comments here, and let me know what you think, because I'd love to see if other people see another person. If there's another person in there, it absolutely explains why they are walking back and forth doing apparently what they're told to do. One thing I don't understand is why they would bring their dog with them unless they thought this person was taking them somewhere and they were coming right back. Now, I want to talk about this tip that came in about a book. When this video was shown, someone came forward, a lady named Nikki Chenault. She was a friend of Sherilyn. She said that after the family disappeared, she got a strange phone call. And it was after this video was shown on one of the national, I don't know if it's Dr. Phil or what, but one of those shows. She got an anonymous call from a woman wanting to know if I was the one looking for the Jamisons. And she had been looking for the Jamisons. So the mysterious caller told Chenault that she had once belonged to a white supremacy group, and she saw a book that had a bunch of names in it, and they were names of someone in a group that had a problem with and needed taken care of. She went on to say that she tried to remember the names after each rally. So apparently this woman belonged to the group and went to rallies, and she would go home and search for those people on the internet. And she knows that that's how she learned about Bobby and Sherilyn. She said she did not know what to make of the caller. Chenault did not know what to make of the mysterious caller. But then the woman told her a piece of information that indicated that she knew something, because she knew about the insignia on Bobby's wedding ring, which many people knew about. And she said she had overheard conversations with these guys, And they were clearly talking about Sherilyn, Bobby, and Madison, and that they took care of them. She says the woman described details about the conversations after the family disappeared, and supposedly one of the guys talked about how he liked to put Madison on his lap and how it made him feel good. Trigger warning, I'm sorry, trigger warning for anyone who's dealt with situations like this, or this is concerning to, I mean, it's concerning to all of us, but you know what I mean. So if you feel triggered by this and need to take a step back, that's totally understandable. I get it. Just come back when you feel like coming back, or watch it at a later time. She had overheard um, enough enough information, overheard enough conversations that this friend Chenault went back and looked at the surveillance video. That's how the surveillance video ties in to what I'm telling you. And investigators said that the moments appeared to show the family in some sort of daze. Again, I don't see that. But they think that it was drug use. But Chenault says she believes the family was being watched. She thinks there's a third person in that video, and many people say it's Bobby and he changed his shirt, but that's not Bobby. If you watch the last time, you see Bobby in a white t shirt going to the truck, and you don't take your eye off the driver's side window of the truck, you see it illuminate white as if he's gotten in. Then later, you see the guy in the brown shirt coming to the truck, and you still see the little illumination on the driver's side truck. I believe Bobby got into the truck and was still there. So, watch this video and let me know what you think. I don't see what she describes. Other people have described it. I don't see it. I don't know if it's a situation where once you hear about something and you watch it, that's what you think it is. So, we're going to talk about what happened. So, they go missing. This packing up the truck, they go missing. And their abandoned truck was found on the 17th, which is 8 days later. It was found very close to where they were supposed to go. It was found on a logging road in the Sandboy Mountains. And inside, IDs, phones, wallets, GPS unit, that $32,000 cash under the seat, and their dog Maisie. Now, Maisie had been a week without food and water, so Maisie was not doing well, but Maisie did survive. Maisie survived, but there was no clue of the family. And what's really weird is that everything was orderly. Food, maps, and toys neatly stacked. No signs of struggle. They show a handwritten Bible, a handwritten journal with Bible verses about protection and light. And it shows that they walked roughly 3 miles into the woods, but they were not found. So it's very strange that this truck, apparently they drove to where they were supposed to go, and then boom, they were gone. So let's talk a little bit more about inside the truck. There were no signs of struggle. Everything was orderly, as we talked about. The GPS logs show that they walked roughly 3 miles into the woods. Everything was meticulously organized, which to me is just strange. I mean, if you're packing up because you're in a hurry and somebody's after you, I don't know that you're going to be meticulous in where everything is. Also, they talk about food, but I'm not sure why the dog didn't have food, why they left the dog behind. It's just, all of this part is weird. So it's almost like it's almost to me like they were forced to go somewhere, because if you were going somewhere on your own, you know, accord, wouldn't you take your dog with you? I mean, you went to the trouble to bring your dog with you. Okay. So hundreds of volunteers and rescue teams went through the terrain. They said this is some of the worst terrain, so they used drones and dogs to locate any signs of the missing family. And there were more than 300 volunteers that joined. The dogs did track a faint scent from the truck, but they lost it near a creek bed. So they know that the family went into the woods. They know it not only from the GPS, but they know it from the dogs. There was heavy rain during that time, so that caused a real problem with the dogs being able to do anything to find them. They did search on ATVs with the dogs, without the dogs, and there just wasn't anything they could find. But fast forward to 2013, the remains of the family were found 3 miles from their abandoned truck. Now, that's really close by. 3 miles when you're out walking in the woods, it may sound like a lot, but it's really not a lot. The average hike is 5 miles. So a 3 mile walk is not that far. Um, but they found partial skeletal remains, and the medical examiner could not determine the cause of death. There were no blunt force or sharp force, no gunshot, or any of those injuries identified. So that made things very difficult. And what happened is the investigators had to go back to the family at that point and say, okay, we can't tell how they died. We don't know what happened. We're going to go back and look at everything. So they went back to look at what they left behind. The Jamisons' home contained some disturbing items that revealed their psychological state. These were journals that were done by Cheryl Lynn. She was writing about being watched, about being followed, and they found letters and a handgun later traced to Bobby. One letter to a neighbor accused her of being a witch, and the everything appeared half-packed, as if they intended. The house appeared half. Let me back up. The house appeared half-packed, as if they intended to return. Because remember, they were looking at this property to go out there and move. So the family was obviously packing up to make that move that they had talked about. But it's really alarming that Cheryl Lynn was taking to these journals and talking about the emotional turmoil inside of her, her fears, her beliefs, and her dark thoughts. One of the quotes that she said is, "Dark things walk among us and feed on fear. I won't go quietly into the darkness." Now, some of this can be biblical, because some of the things I read that she wrote were scriptures taken from the Bible, but they were sort of twisted. In other words, they were not exactly what the Bible says, or some of them were quotes exactly from the Bible, but it seems like she felt that demons and witches and other unseen forces were coming after her and attacking her. Now, I want to talk again about this spiritual warfare. There are a lot of very common beliefs in especially the Christian religion that God stands for good, and many people believe that there's a power, some sort of power overseeing things, and that God stands for good, and that there is another side that stands for evil, and that there is this fight in our world among the spiritual realms. And it is why many people pray. And I understand the way a lot of this works, because being a Christian myself, I understand about praying to a higher power. I think that some of the spiritual warfare conversations that are taken from the religions, where we're talking about, you know, wanting to do bad things, bad thoughts getting in your head. There are a lot of people that believe serial killers and mass murderers and things like that have been overcome with dark thoughts that are from the evil realm. So now I'm tying this back into spiritual warfare, because there are people that believe that you can pray that out. Whereas there's psychological reasoning that tell us that it could be a person's mind is not normal, a mental challenge, a mental defect, perhaps schizophrenia, where, things like that, that can make a person do things that normally they would not do. Many people with mental disease hear voices, and I'm not saying globally they do. I'm saying that there is a subset that do hear voices, and there's a group of people in the world that believe that can sort of be prayed out of a person. Whether you believe that or not, that's not my point here. And I'm not trying to get into a discussion or dissertation about religious beliefs. I'm pointing this out to say that it's not uncommon for people to believe that your financial situation, your physical situation, like Bobby's injuries, and their mental state is all an attack from evil. So, therefore, Sherilyn possibly was not mentally ill in the sense she was not mentally um, not suffering from mental illness, but perhaps she was believing that they could pray these things out of their situation, and they felt that moving to a new location is possibly the change they needed to get the evil out of them. I hope I've made sense. It makes sense in my brain, and when I'm saying this out, I understand, but I hope that I've conveyed that. So I think it's very possible that she had taken these thoughts to another extreme, especially if she was depressed and he was depressed and they were on antidepressants. Sometimes antidepressants do not fix a person completely. And I'm speaking from people that I know personally who have been on antidepressants. And if you're on the wrong medicine, it can make you, want to take your own life or, not thinking rationally. So I wanted to talk about that because we're going to go into this talk about spiritual warfare. The Jamison family did believe that spiritual forces influence their actions. Bobby told their pastor he had seen spirits in their home and wanted to buy special bullets to protect his family. The pastor later told the Oklahomian he believed Bobby was genuinely afraid of something he couldn't explain. Now, again, I don't know if there were ghosts and things in his home. I do not know. I do not have information on that. There are people that believe in ghosts and spirits and demons that you can see. I don't know. So I'm not going to say there was nothing there in his home. I am going to say that their behavior indicates that something else was going on. I don't know, that makes me think that there was a mental situation going on, a psychological, emotional situation going on. But there were a lot of theories. There was theories of foul play, and you can't really rule out these things because we don't know how they died. They include potential involvement of outsiders. Remember that people think they see someone else in the truck. They took $32,000 with them, and when the truck was found, that money was still there. That's just odd to me. If it was drug related, that money would be gone. If it was drug related, it seems like you would see some indication of drugs in their vehicle and in their home. But I'm not involved in the drug world, so I can't say for sure. Land disputes, that's a very big possibility because there were land disputes between Bobby and his family. There are rumors that included a drug deal gone bad and cult involvement. The person that called the family friend indicated that there was some type of white supremacy group involved. Friends recalled Bobby carried large amounts of cash with him from a settlement. And if he was paranoid and he was suffering from a form of paranoia, he may not have wanted to leave that cash laying around even in his home. He may have felt like he had to take it with him. There's also rumors that they did it themselves and that there was a pact. Again, all three of them, everyone except for the dog, was gone. And there are many that believe that a family pact driven by depression led them to take themselves out. And Sherilyn's gun was missing from the home, and they never did recover it. Now, I will say this. If you're going to take yourself out, the gun's going to be there with the remains. I mean, the gun is not going to decay. And unless someone came by and picked up the gun, it seems like the gun would be there. So that's another point where I'm not sure about that. Relatives even though they had a lot of family problems and family drama, and I will talk about this a minute here. Um, hopefully this is interesting to all of you, but I found it to be interesting. One of the things that I found when I was researching this is there was a uh, deep concern from Cheryl Lynn that she believed people were talking about them. Cheryl Lynn believed they were the subject of gossip. And so I did a little digging into that. And apparently, she did not feel like she belonged at the church. They felt like outsiders at the church. Now, members of the church commented over the years that the problem was Cheryl Lynn and Bobby were always coming in and talking about being spiritually attacked in the church and seeing demons and seeing ghosts in their house. And the members of the church did not understand that because, the average church is not going to understand that. That I wouldn't understand if someone came to me and said, "Hey, I've got ghosts hanging out in my house and I got a bunch of demons and they're watching me and people are chasing me." I got to tell you, I would say something's wrong with that person. That person's gone around the bend. So the people at their church could have very well been thinking, they need some help. They've gone around the bend here. So I wanted to just point that out, that feeling of being watched and gossiped about could very well have stemmed from their thoughts about being outsiders at the church. There's also a theory that they might have accidentally encountered perilous conditions and that they were disoriented and got hypothermic. And that explains why they didn't try to return to the vehicle. But it doesn't explain why they went for the walk. They went out there to get property, right? They went out there with money, allegedly, to get this property. Now, it's possible that they were on their way to the property and said, we're going to be living out here. Let's just see what it's like out in the woods. Let's just get some fresh air and go for a nice walk. And something happened. And it's possible, since there were no bullet wounds, bullet holes, fragments, or anything, and there was no blunt force trauma, it's possible that one of them was injured, the other two didn't leave to call for help. See, that doesn't make sense to me either. Why didn't they call for help? GPS puts them out there. Did they not have cell coverage? I don't know. All I know is their phone went dead at 3 p.m. So this really is just a mind-boggling mystery to me. I spent a lot of hours trying to think, would you do this? I spent a lot of time of my life outdoors. I have spent many, many nights camping. I grew up camping. I grew up hiking. I've hiked in the Northeast, the Southeast, the Northwest. I love the mountains, but I don't know that I would have gone for a rugged hike without taking things if I was going to stay. And I certainly would have called for help if something happened. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You guys tell me what you think. I'm not going to keep going on and on. I'm just thinking it out. The disappearance leaves us with numerous unresolved mysteries and contradictions that provoke deeper investigation. Why leave cash and valuables behind? Why walk away without the dog? And even the sheriff said when they closed the case because they didn't have any indication that there was foul play. There was nothing to investigate at that point. They closed it in 2014. Now, there is an indication that the Cold Case Foundation in Oklahoma is looking at it because in 2023, I found some statements from them saying that they are really perplexed by this case. And it's unsolved because the video is so confusing. There's no witnesses. They just disappeared. They went hiking and no one can link them to going walking and hiking before. Um, but again, there was wildlife activity at the skeletal remains, decomposition, and the weather. So there's no way to know exactly what happened. Can it be solved? Yeah, I think it can be solved. Cold case teams are urging people to bring in new tips if they know anything, and they're looking at new technology retesting. I don't know what they've got that would lead to the testing. There might have been DNA they kept from the vehicle. Digital forensics offer hope for uncovering new evidence. Maybe they'll find someone's DNA in the vehicle. I don't know. But the bottom line here is if you know something, say something. If you saw something, say something. And if it's something you want to deep dive into, it's a good case to do it. There are a lot of people that have done podcast episodes on this. YouTube channels have taken this case on, but I don't know that anybody's really dug in to, the cult aspect of it, the spiritual beliefs aspect of it, the drug connection, which I don't know that I believe that there was drugs. Now, the drugs could explain the way people describe them walking around to their vehicle, but so can fear. If someone comes to your house with a gun and says, get everything that you need and pack this vehicle up and go, you may walk in a trance like state because you're just doing what you're told to do because you're in a state of fear. And you add that on to the thoughts they had already of being watched and concerned. It's really bad if they really were being watched and they really were being targeted. We don't want to rule all of that out. So I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you again for watching this. We are working hard to get you content not only on Delphi, but on some other cases of interest. I put a poll in the discussion group, and most of you said you wanted to see unsolved cases, not just missing persons. So I'll try to focus more on cases like this that are unsolved, but there's a lot for you to dig into. And you can tell me if you like this or not. We also have launched our store, and I'll be posting that link regularly in the discussion group. And I know Amy has been posting it here on the YouTube channel. But everything we get in from the sale of those products is to support our channel at Case by Case. So know that we use that money for records request, because when you do FOIA requests and you do records requests at jurisdictions, many times it costs money, and sometimes it can be very, very expensive. So rather than having to always dig out of our pockets, it would be good to have that. We also have, um, things that we have to pay for. So, the channel and things like that. So, and technology. So we would love the support and the help. I just wanted to take that time to let you know we're not doing it to pad our pockets and all that stuff. There's a reason for it. So anyway, if you know of anything about this case, let us know. You can also contact, you can contact the Oklahoma State Bureau, but since the case is closed, I'm not really sure. I could not find an active contact for this. But if you know of anything, let us know in the group and I'll find out who to get it to. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.